Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level. Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase, the podcast that helps you succeed in your business, life, and career. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group, and with me, as always, is Chip Geneshevsky from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. You know, we are coming up on the end of summer already, and I'm not quite sure where it all went.
Time
But
flies when you're growing old.
it does, you know.
It's, but it's yeah, but we've had a lovely stretch of weather. It's supposed to, even though it's supposed to warm up this week. This week it's going to get into the 90s a couple of days, but not the humidity that we had the last time this happened. So we're psyched. And then I have a fun thing coming up on Wednesday, and that I'm 14 months older than my brother Phil, and he turned 70 on Wednesday. And I have no idea what to make of that because he's a bachelor and stuff like that. And it's it's pretty cool stuff. But he and I are the first two out of the seven of us. So
Very cool. Yes. You know, I have been busy with our summer workshops. We've got just 3 of them left. We have this week, we are doing the 2 of the 3 final ones about overcoming imposter syndrome and basic networking 101, how you can build your network. Next week, we wrap up the series with a time management seminar. These are all free virtual workshops. So if anybody out there still wants to jump on, you can go to modernobserver.com and click on Summer of Success. All the info's in there, plus the registration links. So this week, we are going to be talking about building resilience. And, you know, I can't count the number of times over the past 6 months that people say, oh, you know, everything's uncertain. Everything, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. Well, guess what? Nobody knows what's going to happen. And even when they have so-called certain times, you still don't know what's going to happen. So when these things, you know, when everything is up in the air, you need to be resilient. And one of the big things that I've noticed is there seems to be a misunderstanding about what resilience really is. You know, people think it's just a personality trait and either you have it or you don't. But that's not true. It's actually a skill. It's something you can build. And obviously, folks that have gone through a lot tend to be more resilient because they've had to be. Every crisis that you go through, every time a tragedy hits, a difficulty, an obstacle, that's your opportunity to build resilience. But of course, you don't need to wait for a tough experience to be able to become resilient.
yeah, absolutely. Obviously, doing my research today, I got a really, really good starting sentence, and basically it says building resilience involves developing the capacity to, as you're saying, adapt well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. It is not about avoiding challenges, but rather about developing the mental and emotional strength to bounce back from them. This involves cultivating positive thinking, strong social connections, and effective coping mechanisms. And basically, there a bullet of 5 ways to do this. Number one, think positive. Number two,
Well, actually,
look after yourself. Yeah, okay.
before we get into how you can build it, I think it's important for people to realize that resilience is essentially made up of four core components. And these are the components that you'll work on with what Chip is about to talk about. But the first one is your mindset. You need to be seeing challenges as temporary and truly believe that anything that happens, you can solve. Nothing is insurmountable. The second core component is emotional regulation. You have to be able to stay calm when these challenges hit. Resilient people don't panic, they don't fly off the handle. You need to be able to think clearly when things get hard, and that means keeping your emotions in check. And then there's a component of social support, having people you can lean on that can support you and that you can support them. Resilience is a two-way street. You can't just rely on other people, you also have to be there for them. And finally, it's your purpose. Knowing why you're pushing through an obstacle gives you the fuel to keep going. So, with those in mind, Chip, why don't you talk about, ways to build the resilience?
Yeah, you hit on most of the points there. I mean, the first thing you talked about was mindset. And the first thing that I have here is a bullet that describes what your mindset should be, and that's think positive. And then it talks about the other ones that I've saw there. Use your support network, which is your social support. Uh, Looking after yourself, which basically that's talking about your emotional uh, regulation, and then staying calm and having your purpose. Basically, it's so important to do that. So cultivating a positive mindset, we talk about that all the time, and basically that's a choice every single minute. Practicing optimism, focusing on your strengths, challenging negative thoughts, asking, is this really true? And again, like you're saying, realizing that this is going to pass, everything is just temporary, and practicing gratitude. Basically, if you can turn that around, have these triggers in your heads where when times are down, use some type of mechanism to think of something positive that's going on in your life. I mean, I always talk about looking at my pictures on the calendars, but if you have some positive thought or something to get you turned around, that trigger switch, that's a great way to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk so much about mindset, but the key to your mindset during crisis is really the ability to reframe what you're doing and what's going on. And not too long ago, we did an entire episode just talking about how to reframe things. You have to look at setbacks as feedback rather than failure. Understand that, yes, you're going through a difficult time, but there's a reason for it. You're learning from it. You're becoming stronger from it. You can't wallow and just go, why me? But reframing is so important because it allows you to stop seeing things as problems and start seeing them as opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's my presentation, which I now call the, the kindness platform, used to be called the power of positivity, turning obstacles into opportunities. And every single present moment is an opportunity to do that. So another thing in there is prioritizing your self-care. And obviously the mental health has a lot to do with that. But if you're not into some type of exercise routine, even if it's just taking walks every day, to really clear your head out, that's one of the things you got to take care of too. Because if you are not in good physical condition, that's going to drag you down in every other single way. So if you haven't started doing something, just a 10-minute walk every first thing every morning is a great start.
Yeah, absolutely. Physical fitness is crucial, not just to building resilience, but to almost everything you do. Your health can drag you down if you let it. But simple exercise, and as Chip said, it doesn't have to be difficult. Go for a walk for 10 minutes a day. I don't know. many people who can't manage that. And it's not stressful, but you do need exercise. And your mental fitness tends to be greatly affected by your physical fitness. So if you're stressed, if you're in a bad mood, exercise helps alleviate that. And daily exercise, again, even if it's just a few minutes a day, helps prevent that stress. It's an outlet. And we know someone who works with multiple sclerosis patients, and he talks a lot about exercise. And of course, you've got folks in wheelchairs who are telling him, well, I can't exercise. There's nothing I can do. And he tells them, can you lift a can of soup? And every one of them has said, oh, sure, I can lift a can of soup. Good. Lift it up, put it down. Lift it up, put it down. Do that 10 times. You're exercising. You don't have to start trying to lift 50-pound weights. Start with what you can do. But physical exercise is key to your mental state, your mindset, and your resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, one of the easiest ways to start is to just take a walk. And the first thing you identified as far as building resilience is mindset. And one of the things that you can do while you're walking is basically just enjoy the surroundings that you're looking at. In other words, it calms your mind down. It's just so great to be doing that. You start breathing a little bit better and that kind of thing. And I just love just going outside and just enjoying everything that's out there. Everything, it's all the way you look at things. And if it's just you look outside and you just take it for granted as opposed to really appreciating what's out there, just do that. Step outside after you listen to this podcast and just take a look at something and concentrate on that and lose your mind just appreciating what's there.
Yeah, and we were talking about reframing in terms of going outside and doing things. You know, when you go for a walk, if you walk out of your house and you always take a right, take a left. Take a path that you don't always take and see what you haven't noticed before. That helps you get into the mindset of reframing things. And again, if you're going through something and you need to be resilient, this is a great way to trigger a reframing. If you're not going through it and you're trying to build up, this is a way to train your brain to reframe. If you're walking through city streets, go down a street you don't usually go down. Do do something different to help get your mind ready for the reframe.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about social support being so important, and basically, you're not in this alone. I'm sure a lot of you out there, hopefully you have some nice relationships out there. And if you haven't reached out to somebody for a while, give them a call and make their day. But if you have strong social support networks, it's a good idea to get together and talk about things that are going on. I mean, networking is not just about getting things for business, but you can have all different types of reasons for doing that. And I know that you yourself are doing this as far as your podcasts and your support groups that you have and so on and so forth. But it's really important to just join something and get together with other people so you can share what's going on with them and listen to what's going on with them too. Because chances are, if you're feeling down and you're at a group meeting, you actually might be helping somebody else out with their problem that you've experienced that they haven't. And you never know when that's going to happen. And you never know unless you try.
Absolutely. And you do need to be reaching out to folks. We at the Modern Observer Group, about 4 years ago, we started an annual challenge that goes through November and December for the holiday season, which was just every day reach out to somebody and let them know you're there. Let them know that you're thinking about them, you care about them. It doesn't matter if it's a phone call, a text, an email, an actual letter. But we started this 4 years ago. And ever since then, our sister podcast, Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, has ended every episode with that request, saying just reach out to somebody, let them know you're there. Because you know what? The more you do that, the more they're going to be there for you. It's a reciprocal thing. And it doesn't just build resilience, it builds community. And right now in the world, we need as much community as we can get.
Oh, without a doubt. Um, you also talked about purpose, and that's so, so important too. We've talked a lot about how to develop your purpose, and basically it's just doing a whole lot of self-analysis and writing things down that you're good at and that you like to do, and coming up with some type of purpose and mission statement. But that's so, so important to work on that and have that in front of you at all times. So I know we've had prior podcasts that do that, but it's nothing more than just taking out a sheet of paper and starting that by writing down what you're good at, what you like to do, the
Yeah.
people that you know, and get together. Again, we just talked about getting together with other people. That's a great way to do that too. Just share each other's purpose and different things that you're doing with each other. And other people will probably chime in about something that you're good at that you forgot and you just take set as second nature for yourself. Again, people working with people, it's like the math is 2 + 2 is 6 and 4 + 4 is 20 because you got everybody that's just coming up with the great ideas. And if you're focusing on the positives of the people in that room, magic happens. And you're going to walk out of there so uplifted. It's going to be amazing. So,
Absolutely. And as Chip alluded to, we did several episodes about finding your purpose and how to do that. So if you want to get in depth about figuring out what your purpose is, go back, listen to the podcasts where we talk about purpose. When you know what your purpose is, challenges are easier and you are more resilient because you know why you're going through this and what the benefit is on the other end.
yeah, absolutely. I know you always finish the podcast telling people where they can go to see our podcast, but all 300 of them are listed there, plus, and the subjects are right there. So it's not hard to find it too.
Yes. And of course, another thing that builds builds into resilience is stress management techniques. Taking a deep breath, using mindfulness, paying attention to where you are, meditation. We talked about exercise. These are all great ways to help you relax. And when you're relaxed, you are more resilient. Stress is the antithesis of being resilient because that is eating away at you. And if you're under constant stress, it just chips away at you over and over and over. And you don't want that. So you need to be able to manage your stress using breath work, different breathing techniques, different meditation techniques. And you don't have to do this, for hours on end. We all have the image of the person sitting cross-legged for an hour at a time meditating. I have one client who needs to do this, and we started her off just every morning. She gets up, she takes a deep breath. That's it. And we've been doing this for several weeks and it has already made a difference. And that's just one deep breath. Everybody can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you just take a deep breath and let it out, you're not thinking about anything else while you're doing that because you're concentrating on doing that. And another thing that we do talk about all the time is time management and
Yes.
what you should do. You talked about basically, we talked about not just putting in your to-do list as far as for the business goes, but actually blocking out time for all these things. And if you can block out time a couple of times a day to just take a break and do what we're talking about right here, that's a great way to get started. It could be, it could be a walk, it could be doing 5 minutes of just breathing, things like that. But if you start doing those and making a habit out of those on a day-to-day basis, that is going to help you a whole lot.
Yes, block out time to do these things. And another time management technique that can actually help you build resilience and reduce your stress is we've talked about this before, the Pomodoro technique. This is where you set a timer, you work for 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. And then you do it again. Each one of those, the 30-minute segments is called a Pomodoro. And at the end of 4 Pomodoros, you take a longer break. This helps keep you from burning out. And again, when you're burnt out, you are not resilient.
Absolutely. Nobody can keep going and going and going. We're not energizer bunnies out there. So it's so important to do that. And the bottom line is if you do take a 5 minute break, you're going to feel great from doing that. I mean, stop at a point where you can pick it up 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later or whatever you're doing, and you're going to feel so much better. And during the break, you'll probably start thinking positively about things that you maybe wouldn't have thought about if you're just looking at that paper trying to figure out what to do. So you may
Right.
develop other solutions.
And the important part of that 5-minute break is that you walk away from what you're doing. Don't keep staring at the paper, staring at the computer screen. This is a time, again, to reframe your brain. And which, again, we talked about earlier, is a big part of being resilient. So, all of these things tend to feed into each other. And the more you start doing it, the more resilient you'll be. Um, I believe it was Carrie Fisher that talked about the fact in her autobiography that she is a survivor and she has gone through so much. And she said, the problem with being a survivor is that you keep getting called upon to prove you're a survivor. Well, that's what being resilience is. It's being able to do this over and over again without it getting to you, knowing that, yes, you're coming out the other side, you're going to be fine, and you will solve the problems. That's what resilience is. It's not ignoring a problem. It's not, charging into it, and just beating yourself over the head about it. It is a method of going about your business and solving obstacles as they come. It's also not about worrying about every potential obstacle that can come. You know, Resilient people enjoy the time that they have when they're not facing obstacles. They're not always worried about the next one. And that's also an important point because if you're always concerned that there's another obstacle coming and how are you going to deal with it, all you're doing is building up stress.
Yeah, absolutely. So developing coping mechanisms, and we've talked about a few of them. We talked about developing some stress management techniques, finding healthy outlets for emotions. And this is engaging activities that you like to do. Write down when you're finding your passion and your purpose, doing more of what you like to do should be part of that too. So if you can write down different things and schedule those into your daily schedule too, it's so important. So um, developing coping mechanisms is a huge part of that. I mean, you talked about emotional regulation. That's basically what we're talking about. It's ways to keep calm in the face of adversity.
Absolutely. But, unfortunately, most people don't prepare. We've talked a lot about things you can be doing before a crisis hits to get yourself ready for it. And you can do these once it hits, to make yourself more resilient. But we know that most people are going to wait till an obstacle hits them before they really think about building their resilience. So here we have a simple 3-step action plan about how to face a challenge so that you are resilient. And step one is identify what the challenge is and identify it as clearly as possible. You want to be able to state exactly what is going on, why it's a challenge, and how it's an obstacle. When you fully understand the challenge, you're better able to take care of it. Okay? Step two, choose three resilient strategies of all the ones we've talked about, whether it's exercise, time management, stress reduction. Pick three and use them and keep using them because this isn't a one and done thing. So when you need to be resilient, keep coming back to the techniques we've talked about. And step three, share your plan for handling the obstacle with someone who will hold you accountable. Accountability partners are key to being able to solve problems. And we've talked about this in the past, to meet your goals, to do better. Accountability partners are a fantastic, valuable resource. So share if you don't already have someone that you can use as an accountability partner, find somebody and be a partner for them. Hold them accountable for things they're trying to do because you're stronger working together than you are working on your own. All right, so just to quickly recap, when you need to build your resilience, we're talking about building your mindset. We're talking about keeping control of your emotions. We're talking about building social support. And we're talking about knowing your purpose. These are things you can do immediately. Figure out what it is that is driving you and be ready because obstacles are going to happen. You don't have to know what it's going to be, but know something is going to happen. Be ready to reframe the problem, be able to reach out for help if you need it, be prepared to stay committed to your long term vision. Don't let your obstacle derail you, and make connections with folks. Because again, as I just said, you're stronger together than you are on your own. All right, we are just about at the end of our time. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for today?
Well, I always like the old Monty Python song that says, always look on the bright side of life. Unfortunately, that's not always possible. But developing the capacity to adapt well in the face of adversity and trauma and so on and so forth. It's not about avoiding the challenges, but approaching them with the methods that we just talked about. So, mindset is so important. And that is just an every present moment thing. You can choose and develop a way to do that. Obviously, emotional regulation is so important. And the social support, I think, is the most important because you can't do this alone. And if you have a group of people that you are sharing this with, having an accountability partner like you talked about, it's so important to do that. The bottom line is we are all one, but we are also all together and we're all here to help each other out. So that's my takeaway for the day.
Yeah. I think for me, the big takeaway is the fact that resilience isn't an either or proposition. It's not either you're resilient or you're not. If you don't feel you're resilient, you can change that. You can build your resilience. It's a skill that can be learned and practiced like any other, and it's an important skill to have. So go out and build your resilience. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.